$62,837. That's how much Lennar, America's second largest home builder, is now paying every single buyer to walk into one of their Sunbelt homes. In 2022, that number was around $17,000. Today, it's the highest level Lennar has paid since 2009. And on their last earnings call, their co-CEO admitted exactly why on the record. Buyers in Florida and Texas needed more help than most other markets around the country. That quote came out 3 months before the U.S. Census Bureau confirmed something even worse. Florida's net domestic migration just collapsed 93% in 3 years. Texas dropped 70%. And the Midwest, for the first time this decade, is the region pulling Americans in. That's why today we're telling you the Census Bureau just dropped a bombshell migration report, and the Sunbelt has officially broken. If you bought a Sunbelt home in the last 4 years, the equity you think you have isn't sitting still. It's actively being subsidized by builders. By the end of this video, you're going to see the 5 Florida cities Cotality, formerly CoreLogic, says will lose the most value next, the exact percentage of D.R. Horton homes now requiring a mortgage buydown to close, and the one Sunbelt state that just got outdrawn by Alabama for the first time on record. Let's start with the number that should have made every news outlet in the country lose their minds, but somehow didn't. On January 27, 2026, the U.S. Census Bureau quietly released their vintage 2025 population estimates. Buried in those tables was a statistic that rewrites the last decade of American real estate. In 2022, Florida pulled in 310,892 net domestic migrants, people from other U.S. states packing up and moving in. It was the biggest year Florida had ever seen, and it cemented every headline you read about the great Sunbelt boom. Last year, Florida's net domestic migration was 22,517 from the Census Bureau directly. That's a 93% collapse in 3 years. And here's the part the headlines refused to print. In 2025, Alabama, the state nobody on YouTube has been telling you to move to, pulled in 23,358 net domestic migrants, more than Florida. For the first time in modern record-keeping, Alabama outdrew the Sunshine State. Texas isn't immune. Census shows Texas net domestic migration fell from 222,000 in 2022 to 67,299 last year, a 70% drop. The Texas state demographer Lloyd Potter told the Texas Tribune why. People are a little skittish in terms of moving and doing anything drastic. Skittish. That's the official word that state demographer of Texas chose to describe the housing tailwind your Tampa or Austin home value has been riding for years. Now, here's where the story gets really uncomfortable for anyone holding a Sunbelt mortgage. While Florida and Texas were imploding, something the housing media has been dismissing for 2 years finally happened. The Midwest turned positive. Mark Perry, a senior demographer at the U.S. Census Bureau, doesn't do hype. His exact line in the press release: from July 2024 through June 2025, the Midwest also saw positive net domestic migration for the first time this decade. Indiana, Michigan, Minnesota, North Dakota, Ohio, South Dakota, and Wisconsin all gained more domestic movers than they lost. And in Michigan specifically, Kurt Metzger, the demographer who founded Data-Driven Detroit, told the Detroit News he's never seen this happen before. His quote, "I go back to 1991 in my data, and we've never seen it." 1991. That's the last comparison point his data even has. Bill Clinton wasn't president yet. The internet was barely a thing. And we're now living through the first reversal of that pattern in 35 years. So if you're sitting at home right now thinking, okay, where are the Americans actually going? The Census Bureau just answered that for you. Ohio, Michigan, states the housing media spent a decade telling you we're dying. Real quick, if this is the first video of ours you're watching, hit subscribe and especially the notification bell. The migration data only updates twice a year, and the next round drops something even bigger. Bell on. Let's keep going. Census data is one thing, but government data lags. So how do we know this isn't just a one-quarter blip? Because the people with the most money on the line have already told us, on the record, under SEC reporting requirements. Lennar is the second largest home builder in America. They build more homes in Florida and Texas than almost any company on earth. On their Q4 2025 earnings call in December, their disclosure showed they spent an average of $62,837 per home in buyer incentives, mortgage rate buydowns, closing cost credits, free upgrades, price reductions. 3 years ago, that number was around $17,300. Today, $62,837, the highest incentive figure Lennar has put up since 2009, the year of the Great Recession housing bust. Let me put that in real numbers. On a $400,000 Lennar home in Tampa or Austin, the builder is now eating roughly $62,000 to make the sale happen. That's the equivalent of dropping the price from $400,000 to $338,000. A 15% effective discount that doesn't show up on Zillow because it's hidden in the financing. And it's not just Lennar. D.R. Horton is the largest home builder in America. On their Q2 fiscal 2026 earnings call on April 21st, the executive team disclosed that 73% of their closings last quarter required a mortgage buydown to close. 3 out of every 4 homes D.R. Horton sold last quarter only sold because the builder bought down the buyer's mortgage rate. That's not a healthy market. That's a market on life support. And D.R. Horton's CEO Paul Romanowski told investors on that same call, quote, "Texas and Florida are not quite the powerhouses they once were." That's the CEO of America's largest home builder on a recorded earnings call admitting that the 2 markets that drove the entire Sunbelt narrative are no longer the engines they were sold as. Pulte Group said the same thing in different words. Their CEO, Ryan Marshall, called Texas and many Western markets sluggish on their Q4 2025 call, while pointing to relative strength in the Midwest and Northeast. 3 of the largest home builders in America, 3 earnings calls, same story. So if the Sun Belt is broken, the obvious question is, which cities are next? And that question already has an answer. Cotality, the company that runs the Case-Shiller Home Price Index alongside S&P, released their March 2026 Home Price Index report on May 5th. Tucked inside was a market risk indicator list. 5 metropolitan areas Cotality's models say are most likely to see further home price declines over the next 12 months. All 5 are in the same region. Number 5, Palm Bay, Melbourne, Titusville, Florida. Number 4, Marietta, Georgia. Number 3, Lakeland, Winter Haven, Florida. Number 2, Deltona, Daytona Beach, Ormond Beach, Florida. And number 1, the metropolitan area Cotality says is at the highest risk in the entire United States, Cape Coral, Fort Myers, Florida. 4 of the top 5 are Florida metros. The 5th is Georgia. If you own a home in any of these markets, the company that runs the most cited home price index in the country is publicly forecasting that your equity is about to take another hit. But wait, it gets worse. Home prices in those areas aren't just at risk, they're already falling. The S&P Cotality Case-Shiller Index for February 2026 showed Tampa down 2.1% year over year, Phoenix down 1.8%, Dallas down 1.7%, Denver down 2.2%, Seattle down 2%. Meanwhile, Chicago is up 5%, New York up 4.7%, Cleveland is up 4.2%. And yet again, it gets worse. Zillow's Home Value Index from last summer showed Tampa down 6.2% year over year, Austin down 6%. Cape Coral, Florida, the same Cape Coral Cotality just named the highest risk metro in America, was down 9% year over year. On a typical $450,000 home in Cape Coral, that's $40,500 in equity gone in 12 months. Wait, it gets worse. Adam Data Solutions tracked the share of mortgaged homes that are equity rich versus seriously underwater. In Q2 2024, 49.2% of American homeowners were equity rich. By Q1 2026, that share had fallen to 43.3%. The states with the biggest year-over-year increases in seriously underwater mortgages were Kansas, Louisiana, Georgia, and Iowa. The Sunbelt equity wave is rolling over in real time. And here's the controversial take that's going to fill the comment section. The Sunbelt boom of 2020 to 2024 wasn't a real housing trend. It was a one-time refugee event from the pandemic and the era of free money. Florida and Texas weren't winning on fundamentals. They were winning because Californians were panic buying with 3% mortgages they could carry anywhere. The moment the rate environment normalized, the migration normalized too. What we're seeing now isn't a downturn. It's the Sunbelt reverting to what it actually is, a region with brutal insurance costs, deteriorating affordability, and an inventory glut that will take years to absorb. If you disagree, tell us in the comments. Specifically, tell us which of those 4 data sources, the Census Bureau, Cotality, Lennar's earnings call, or Adam, is wrong, because they all say the exact same thing. If you've got a strong opinion either way, drop it in the comments and hit the like button so this video gets in front of more people who need to see this data before they list their Cape Coral house at last year's prices. The algorithm doesn't care what I think, it cares what you do. Now, let me address the question I know is coming. Couldn't this just be a temporary slowdown? Couldn't rates drop, the spring market come roaring back, and the Sunbelt boom resume? In a normal cycle? Sure, yeah. In this cycle? No. 5 structural forces are now working against the Sunbelt simultaneously. First, insurance. Florida average homeowner premiums have climbed roughly 30% statewide and 40% in Central Florida since 2022. Coastal markets like Fort Lauderdale are now averaging $8,347 a year. State Farm and Farmers exited Florida years ago. That's not coming back. Second, affordability. The American Enterprise Institute Housing Center reported that as of late 2024, every major metro in California, Texas, and Florida was posting nominal year-over-year home price growth of less than 1%. Meanwhile, every major metro in the Northeast, except D.C., was posting positive, above-average growth. The Sunbelt's affordability advantage, the entire reason people moved there, is structurally gone. Third, inventory. 18 states are now back above their pre-pandemic 2019 active listing levels, almost all in the Sunbelt or Mountain West. In January of last year, only 3 states had exceeded those levels. We went from 3 to 18 in less than a year. Fourth, mortgage stress. Intercontinental Exchange Mortgage Technology, the company that processes most of the mortgage data in this country, reported in March 2026 that active foreclosure inventory hit 273,000 homes, the highest level in 6 years. Mortgage Bankers Association Q1 2025 data showed Florida had the largest year-over-year delinquency increase in the country, followed by South Carolina and Georgia. And fifth, the macro shift. Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis data shows manufacturing construction spending tripled from $80 billion annualized in 2020 to a peak of $235 billion in late 2024. The factories getting built, semiconductor plants, EV battery facilities, data centers are concentrated in Ohio, Indiana, Michigan, the Carolinas, and Tennessee. The economic gravity of America is moving toward the new industrial base, not the retirement condos. 5 forces, all structural, all pointing the same direction. Let me close by talking to 3 groups of people watching this, in order of who has the most at stake. If you own a home in Florida, Texas, Arizona, Nevada, or Colorado, you have the most leverage in this conversation and the smallest window. Your home is currently worth what it's worth on Zillow today. 6 months from now, if Cotality's risk model plays out, that number could be 5 to 10% lower. If you've been thinking about selling, to relocate, to downsize, to cash out equity, the spring 2026 window is closing fast. Builders are already discounting. Resale sellers who wait 6 months will be too. If you're a buyer, especially in the Midwest or Northeast, you have a different problem. Inventory in your region is tight and prices are still rising. Cotality just confirmed Illinois, New Jersey, Connecticut, Nebraska, and Indiana are leading the country in year-over-year price growth. The deals are not in Cleveland. The deals are in Cape Coral. But buying a falling knife in a region with structural insurance and affordability problems is its own kind of risk. If you're an investor, this is the rebalancing trade of the decade. Parcel Labs data showing institutional investors flipping from net buyers to net sellers in Sunbelt metros. Atlanta investors are now selling roughly 2 homes for every 1 they buy, is a leading indicator you can't ignore. The smart money is already out. Here's the line I want you to remember. The Sunbelt didn't crash. It just stopped being the only story in town. That's the slowest motion real estate event in modern American history, happening on national news, in earnings calls, in census data. And most homeowners are still acting like the 2021 narrative is the current narrative. It's not. 3 independent sources just confirmed it. If you got value from this, do us a favor, subscribe and turn on the notification bell. The next video is the one homeowners in Cape Coral, Tampa, Austin, and Phoenix don't want to watch, but absolutely need to. We're ranking the 10 Sunbelt cities where home equity is going to evaporate fastest in 2026, with the exact dollar projections by Metro from Cotality, Zillow, and Adam. That video drops in the next few days. Bell on so you don't miss it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.